murder of 6-year-old JonBenet Ramsey in 1996, 16 years ago, sparked a media frenzy that put her parents, Patsy and John Ramsey, under the microscope. From the very start, they were the prime suspects in her murder, and they were still insisting that they were innocent when I interviewed them in March of 2000. Take a look. Mr. and Mrs. Ramsey, did either of you have anything to do with the death of your daughter?
No.
No. Mr. Ramsey, did you kill JonBenet?
No, I did not.
Mrs. Ramsey, did you kill your daughter?
No, I did not kill my daughter.
It was such a tragedy all around, and sadly, John Ramsey suffered yet another tragedy in 2006 when he lost his wife, Patsy, to cancer. He has been completely exonerated in JonBenet's murder, and he received an apology from the authorities. But good heavens, what he's gone through. And now he shares his thoughts in this inspiring, and also it's like a great mystery story, except it's true. It's called The Other Side of Suffering. Please welcome to The View, John Ramsey. John, you and I have done many interviews together.
Yes.
And I always felt that you and Patsy were innocent.
Yeah, I know you
but
said that. Thank you.
It took 12 years for you to be cleared, and you even got an apology finally from the authorities. But right from the start, your daughter was strangled. You discovered her Christmas Day, and from the beginning, even though there was no DNA and evidence, you two, for years and years, were considered the chief suspects. Why?
Well, and I think police always look at the caregiver first in the death of a child.
Yes.
And that, even though it shocked us to think that that was possible, that we'd be considered, we accepted that, but assumed that they would then quickly move on, which of course they did not.
For years and years.
For years, yeah.
And they never have found the person who did it.
No.
Why didn't they move on?
I think they placed their bet early, the first day, and were unwilling to change the bet and didn't want to be proven wrong. And I had a very seasoned chief of police tell me that there's nothing more dangerous in this country than a police department that makes up its mind.
Yeah. They didn't want to, because they couldn't find the suspect, maybe they didn't want to...
Well, and I think people want a solution to that. It was a horrible crime, and a child was murdered, and people just want an answer.
It wasn't just you and Patsy. Your son, Burke, who was 9 at the time, was at home that night when JonBenet was found strangled. And he answered investigators' questions again and again and again. But I hear, even as recently, I'm looking at October 2010, investigators were still speaking to him. Do they still think that he may have been involved?
No,
he was also a suspect, that little boy.
Well, ironically, yes. Unbelievably, yes. But the 2010 incident was a little bizarre in that the police came to his dorm room during finals week, his senior year, knocked on his door, gave him a card and said, if you ever want to talk to us, here's our card, and they left. And of course it was representatives, they reinterrogated him and so forth. That was not true. But
Well, it sounds like they were still suspicious, though.
I don't think so. Not of Burke. Apparently there was a task force a couple years before that recommended that they go talk to Burke again to see, now that he's older, did he remember anything?
People still suspicious of you?
Oh, I'm sure there's an element that is, sure. That's never going to go away.
So it took 12 years to become exonerated, yet in the public eye, as Barbara just alluded to, it took a long time for the public to maybe step away from blame, right? So going back, do you think that at being 6 years old, people would see JonBenet Ramsey and say, okay, well, they put her in this situation. They would assert blame. Do you, looking back, think that there was a connection between her being in pageants to her murder?
Well, I wondered that. I don't think so,
Yeah.
But yet I don't think it was a good idea.
She was in the all dressed up like the little kids in the tiara.
Why was that a good idea?
Patsy and JonBenet did it for fun. They just had fun with it. In fact, we used to joke that she needed to lose a few of these contests so she understood that you lose in life sometimes. You don't always win. But it was just fun for them. It was a mother-daughter thing. And Patsy, you say, what else could a child... She wanted to give her children outlets to try to see what they're good at.
When you see something like we talk about this all the time on the show, John, toddlers and tiaras, when you see a show like that, what are your initial thoughts and message to parents?
It's kind of shocking to me, frankly. I think When Patsy and JonBenet were doing this 15 years ago, it wasn't as, I don't know, as intense.
But people criticized you. It was one of the reasons that they were angry, the public, with you. Look what you did with your little girl.
Well,
Do you think you called attention to her?
well, that's the risk. I don't think that was the cause of her murder, but yet that was a potential risk. And I tell people, look, if you're in a shopping mall and there's more than 100 people there, there's probably someone there that's looking at your child in a way they shouldn't.
Do you
Just
think you
be aware of
you
that.
think you may have placed your family in these kind of circumstances that may have called attention to them, that may have related to?
Yeah, I think
her
so.
death?
And that I regret that, but I think that's very possible. Because that's the question you ask, why were we targeted? Why were we singled out?
Did you ever find an answer to that question? Why us?
No, not yet.
We also do not know who you think did it and who the police think. Don't tell us yet. We've got more time, and we want to give you more time. So John Ramsey is going to stay with us. We'll be right back.
Next, Barbara has more of her exclusive interview with the late Patsy Ramsey about the murder of daughter JonBenet.
We're back with John Ramsey, the father of JonBenet Ramsey, who would have been 21 had she not been brutally murdered. I want to play a clip because we did many interviews together. This is from the year 2000 when I asked Patsy Ramsey about how she found the strength to go on. Mr. and Mrs. Ramsey, again and again in your book, you talk about your faith in God.
If it weren't for our faith, there would be no hope of ever seeing JonBenet again. But we know that we will see her again in heaven.
You think that JonBenet is in a better place?
I would have liked to think that my arms were the best place for JonBenet to be. But she's in a place where I hope to be one day. I know I'll be there.
Well, Patsy Ramsey died in 2006. It wasn't until 2008 that she was officially cleared, so she died, John, still being a suspect. She never knew that she had been cleared.
Correct.
That's a terrible thing right there.
Well, Patsy was a very strong person. She knew who she was. Her friends knew who she was. And so even though that element was still there, an overhang, it didn't seem to
You know, John,
be
it's
a bother.
it's been a hard journey for you, because before JonBenet was brutally murdered, you lost your daughter Beth in a car accident. Then you lost your daughter JonBenet. Then you lost your wife to ovarian cancer. I mean, I don't think anybody could blame you for being angry, for being bitter. Were there times when you just considered that this life here was not worth it?
I'd be less than honest if I didn't say yes.
Meaning you thought of suicide?
Well, suicide is an escape from an intense pain, and that the better alternative for us, which we found, was to sleep. This was recommended to us by our minister. He said, when you get up, deal with the day. When you can't deal with it anymore, go to bed.
What if you can't sleep, though, with the
Well,
anxiety?
two Benadryl did a wonder on that.
You also lost your business, I mean, your life. You know.
Definitely challenged.
Before we went to break, Barbara was asking, who do you think killed JonBenet Ramsey? What is your theory?
Well, I think John Douglas, who was a very noted FBI crime profiler, set up that program for the FBI a number of years ago, took a hard look at this, and he said he believed that it was someone who was angry at me or jealous of me, and it was primarily directed at me. And that was hard for me to accept and to swallow.
But she was sexually assaulted, the child, so
Yes.
maybe the motivation was was a pedophile's motivation.
Well, there is that theory as well.
In the house, and so it was such a brutal.
And what ultimately a challenge to your faith. You know, you say on page 28 of your book, I asked myself, why didn't I pray more? Where had I fallen short in God's eyes? Why didn't he protect JonBenet? Was I being punished? And then on the end of the book, you say, God's grace has come to me through trial. I believe the best days of my life are ahead of me. I found them on the other side of suffering, where they were waiting. How do you make that journey? How do you go from thinking, I am being punished, the love of my life, my little girl, was just ripped from me, blaming God, essentially, to feeling ultimately loved by him?
Well, the first question I think anybody asks when they're when they're thrown a curveball in life is, why did this happen to me? And I certainly asked that question in anger. But a number of years ago, a friend asked me, he said, John, do you believe the best days of your life are in front of you? And I said, well, no, what a silly question. That's not possible. And I wasn't being bitter or
John, I'm
sarcastic.
going to stop because we only have 30 seconds, and you're in a good place in your life, in part because you remarried just 8 months ago to this lovely lady, Jan, sitting in our front row. So, I think that makes people feel very good. Having gone through so much, and we all feel for you, I'm very happy to see you in this place.
Well, thank you.
In this place here and in this
Oh, it's
place
nice
in
to
your
be
life.
here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The book is called The Other Side of Suffering. It is inspirational, and it's also, as I said, a great mystery, and members of our audience are going home with it. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be back.